Are you really physically sick? Wow. Have you ever had one of those moments where something grabs hold of your attention, leaves you in a tailspin, and then you wonder if everyone else is observing what you're observing? Recently, I was more than alarmed about the rapid increase of cancer in my country and the world. It is almost as if someone is dying or has died due to this dreaded disease everywhere you turn. As if that wasn't enough, immediately behind cancer, you also have other rapidly increasing diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and many other common illnesses. Not to mention the strange strains of the coronavirus, flu, AIDS, dengue fever, and many uncommon diseases. Now, at some point, you must ask yourself, what in the world is going on? Well, I am sure most of you reading this would immediately resort to our unhealthy eating habits and lack of exercise, which I agree do play an essential part in this mystery. However, in today's teaching, I would love for you to indulge me for a few minutes as I travel in an entirely different area of understanding to unveil this profound mystery. In Luke 13:11-16, the Bible gives a fascinating account of a woman that was sick for 18 years. Scripture further records how Jesus Christ eventually had an encounter with this woman, and she was healed due to their encounter. Question: was this woman really sick? Well, let's discover for ourselves based on this particular scripture. I am confident it will provide spiritual insight into the myriad of diseases we are challenged with today and their true origin. And behold, there was a woman which had a spirit of infirmity for 18 years, and was bowed together, she could not stand erect, she was bent over, and could in no wise lift up her head. I am sure many of you read this scripture many times and never really focused on what was being said here. Firstly, this lady's appearance made the average person think she was sick. Nevertheless, Scripture clearly states that this woman's physical sickness resulted from a spirits or disembodied beings that mimicked this ailment. In fact, Scripture goes on to say that when Jesus saw her, he said, "Woman, thou art loosed from thine infirmity." He then laid his hand on her, and immediately she stood straight and glorified God. So what really happened, and can this be done today? The truth is, my friend, this is nothing new in our world today. In fact, I will take it a step further. In countries and communities worldwide where there is an overwhelming practice of the occult, mainly witchcraft, the practitioners of witchcraft would literally send a curse of sickness to their victims, who are evil spirits assigned to mimicking a particular disease in its human host. The reality is this curse, which again are evil spirits assigned to the victim, has influenced the victim's mind and spirit to such a degree that this person's physical body begins to display the symptoms of whatever disease is being perpetrated in its victim. In some cases, the person will smell foul odors seemingly coming from themselves that no one else can smell, see things on their skin that no one else can see. In extreme cases, the victim would literally feel things crawling or moving in their bodies, such as snakes, crabs, etc. Again, it's a spiritual attack of witchcraft on that person's mind and spirit that is very much real to them and anyone knowledgeable of the spirit world. Eventually, the victim would stop complaining about it because they assume that others believe they're crazy and begin to take on a recluse attitude. Of course, this is precisely what the intent of the curse is all about: to isolate its victim and advance its attack on its victim to bring about their demise. Now, I am fully aware that for some of you reading this, it may sound like a scene out of a horror film, but I can assure you that this reality is far greater than you can imagine. Folks oppressed by this spirit of infirmity will display all the physical signs of a specific illness. However, when they decide to visit a doctor, even the doctors are confused, simply because even though the patient's symptoms are pointing them in the area of a particular diagnosis, nevertheless, the medical tests that they perform on the patient will display no sign of what is seemingly the illness. Well, this is easy to explain, and the explanation is that spirits do not and cannot show up in medical tests. Thus, the labeling of it, spirit of infirmity. Even more striking, this spirit of infirmity went unnoticed by the religious leaders of Jesus' day. Can you imagine that? Scripture further records in Luke 13:14 that the rulers of the synagogue, weights of the synagogue, retiarius of the church, were filled with indignation towards Jesus for actually healing this woman on the Sabbath day. Now, isn't this incredible? For 18 years, this lady suffered while attending church, giving offerings, paying her tithes, and being prayed for repeatedly. She was anointed with oils, attending conference after conference, and absolutely none of the spiritual folks were able to heal her or even diagnose her with this spirit of infirmity. Would you believe that these same leaders were more concerned about their traditions of the Sabbath day than this woman receiving some type of relief? Now, doesn't this speak volumes of present-day religious organizations? Lots of talk and promises with little to no manifestation. Plate. In any event, could the root of your poor health in reality be a result of a spirit of infirmity or a generational curse that is in your family, which the spirit of infirmity also rules? Okay, so you're not sure. Well, let's perform a spiritual diagnosis. Didn't your grandmother die from cancer? Your mom died from cancer. Now that you have been diagnosed with cancer, have you connected the dots yet? Well, I am sure you would have to agree it's at least generational. If you look further into your family lineage, you'll discover more of your family members who have died due to a spirit, not an actual physical illness. Could these folks have been here with us today? Had someone with spiritual insight addressed the spirit instead of the symptoms? In Luke 13, 15, 16, Scripture now begins to divulge more detailed information about this woman and what was happening with her. Jesus began to defend the right of this woman to be healed on the Sabbath day to the church's leaders, Synagogue. Jesus said, "And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, indicating that she was a believer and follower of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, etc." In today's understanding, she was a Christian, whom Satan had bound for 18 years, be loosed from this bound on the Sabbath. To further prove that she did not have a physical sickness, Scripture clearly stated that Satan had bound her for 18 years. Satan is a spirit, right? So it's also understood that Satan did not physically show up and bound her. So what did he bind up? He bound her spirit and mind and ultimately manifested itself in her physical body. Is it possible you could be a victim of this evil spirit? So with the above information and revelation in mind, are your religious leaders and prayer partners, while praying concerning your sickness, explicitly addressing this spirit? Or are they doing the usual, such as screaming, shouting, pouring oils all over you, but never ever dealing with the root, which will always be a spirit? Join me in the conclusion of this eye-opening revelation as we continue with Part 2. Are you really sick? Written by Kevin L. A. Ewing.